Okay, guys, so it's bang on 12 o'clock. So good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing really well and keeping safe. Thank you very much for joining us today for the next instalment in the Your Land Lunchtime Bites webinar series. So I'm Catherine. So I work for Your Land Developments and I look after Officer Fields in the Southeast. Today we have a lovely special guest with us from Dennis Family Homes, who is Stephanie Wojneska. So today Stephanie will be discussing some topics with us and an overview of the building process. So just to let everybody know, the session will be recorded for you to access at a later time, so you can share with your family and friends. And we do ask for all participants, if you can just please mute yourselves. So yeah, we'll get started. So some of the topics that we will be covering today is the building process overview. So what is generally involved and what should a purchaser consider when you've locked down your design and you've chosen your builder. Frequently asked questions from new purchasers that are going into the building, starting the building process, and then we'll discuss some developer requirements. So what I might do, might hand it over to you, Steph, and yeah, we'll discuss some topics today.
Excellent. Hi everyone, I'm Steph from Dennis Family Homes. So yeah, I'll just go through the main topics that we've got to cover. So just as an overall overview of what's generally involved with building a new home. So starting with choosing the right house and floor plan, completing an estimate and paying a deposit, then moving on to finalising paperwork, personalising your home, the look and feel of it, signing your building contract, preparing for site start, the building commencing, and settlement and handover. So going through all of that, starting with what a purchaser should consider. So you've got your location, so obviously where you want to live, budget, how much you want to spend, financial plans. So that's something that obviously you would discuss with a broker or a bank just to determine how you're going to obviously fund all of this, and other expenditures that you would have after the house is completed. So landscaping, other bits and pieces that then go with that. So as a step one with the FAQ, so how long does it take to build a house? So this does vary from house to house, so it does depend on the size, number of stories, complexity of the build, and other unavoidable setbacks. Project time on flat blocks tends to be quicker, as there is less that we have to do to prepare the block to start building. And at the moment, the current average build time in the southeast area for Dennis Family Homes is 25 weeks for a single story and 35 for a double story. So that will range obviously across all of our floor plans, so starting from a 15 square single story, working our way up to a 50 square double story. So it'll just vary depending on the house itself, but somewhere within those timeframes is our average. How soon after settlement? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Seth, just going on those timeframes. So does that factor in, you know, I don't know, weather and things like that, if for potential?
Generally it does, yes. So I'll just go back to that one. So within our timeframes, when we issue a client with a HIA contract, it will have more time built into it. So generally when it comes to a single story, I think it allows for about 320 odd days-ish. In terms of how long we do allow for that build, that is generally an overestimation. It's just more based on if there is delays due to weather, public holidays, RDOs, that sort of thing. And then from there, the actual time frame that we usually take will come down depending on, yeah, like I said, the size of the house. But it's just more so obviously that it gives us a bit of coverage as well as clients when they're building, just to obviously have that assurance as to how long it will take. But yeah, it's just, I mean, going off an average build time, that would probably, give you a pretty good idea.
Awesome.
And then going after, how soon after settlement can we start building? So this one's an interesting one because there's a lot of misconception that once you settle on the land, we can start building tomorrow. This isn't generally the case. So it does vary depending on where you are in the process when the land does settle. So for example, if you are settling on your land next week, but you haven't quite gotten to the point of finalising your builder just yet, obviously that will delay things. When it does come down to it, it will just really depend on where you are. So working through that, generally what I recommend to most of my clients is that you will be looking at getting the house portion of the overall, I guess, portion of it to be sorted out at least 3 to 6 months prior to land being titled and settled. That just gives you the time to finalise your estimates, do your colour appointment, pick all the pretty things that are in the house, for us to issue your contract. Once your contract is issued and signed, you then take that to the bank, so it gives you the time to organise your finance approval, gives us time to apply for relevant permits, developer required approvals, I should say, and other bits and pieces that go with it. So there's a lot that we actually have to do prior to being able to start building, regardless of where the land is at. So yeah, generally allow that good 3 to 6 months prior to land settlement, just to give yourself the time, and that'll sort of help along that way. Yeah, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, sorry, lovely. So just going on that point as well, I think with some builders, is it generally they have a certain amount of builds that they do? Every
builder's a little bit different. We don't really have that, I guess, in that instance. It will just vary depending on how many builds a supervisor has at any time, and obviously when we can get a house to site start. We generally don't work off having, a set number of builds in any given month. But yeah, it's just more so about making sure that we can obviously get all of the requirements from a council perspective, a developer perspective, finance approvals, building permits, from that end of it. And then, yeah, once all of that sort of comes through, then we're able to site start. But it will really depend on, where overall in the process a client's at when land does settle. I guess the one thing to consider, that even if your land does settle and title, with, like say today, for example, we'd still have to wait a couple of weeks, sometimes even a month to a month and a half, for council to provide us with relevant documents. So that would be where sewer is, where any easements and connections are. So until we get all of those documents from council, we then can't actually physically start building, because we're not all over everything that we need to sort of be to be able to start building. So that's just something else to consider, regardless, that it just can take some time that's outside of our control, outside of the client's control, outside of developer control. It just depends on council.
Yeah.
And then going on to question 3, so what are site costs? So
something I get asked about a lot.
Yeah, so this one does vary in the sense of depending on, I guess, how it's classified. So it's just really additional costs and items that need to be included as part of the build in order for us to get the block ready to build your new home on. So as an example, it would generally cover temp fencing, an upgrade to the slabs, rock removal, excavation of the block, drainage around the house, connections to sewer, stormwater, electricity, all of those bits and pieces. And then, site costs will vary depending on the soil type. So when I mention a slab upgrade, that will be determined by the engineers. So they'll go out and do a soil test. They'll come back and say, okay, well, the soil classification is a H class, whatever it might be. From there, they'll engineer the slab based on the soil conditions, and then we'll be able to allow for the actual slab itself based on what the engineer has requested. So that will vary from block to block. I've heard previously that there can be a big variance between even the same street as to what you'll have within each block. It's just, luck of the draw, I guess, in that sense. So that will just vary within there, depending on the area, depending on the slope of the block, with what the developer's doing as part of their earthworks. Potentially we can fix the site cost, but it will vary. So that's just something else to consider as well.
Yeah, great.
And then question number 4, so what needs to be allowed for after moving in? So in most instances, after the house is finished, you'll need to allow for your fencing, your landscaping, letterbox, clothesline, window furnishings. We can, for example, do driveway as part of the build, so we can include that, so you can have that as part of your finance. Same thing with the window furnishings. But then there's some things that, obviously, we're builders, we're not landscapers, so there's a lot of things that we won't allow for. Otherwise, you'll still need to have that in back of mind. You'll have additional connections. So, for example, your internet, when you do connect to Opticom, you will have an establishment fee that comes from the provider themselves. So that's something else that you'd have to consider. TV antennas, electricity and gas meter connections. So you'll have that that comes into play as well. So that's just other things that, yeah, you'd have to allow for outside of the build. Going on to this part. So Catherine, I'll hand back over to you.
Yeah, so developer requirements. So this can also be referred to as the design guidelines. So these are specifications around the estate and what the developer has put forward, and sort of to gain, you know, a different, I guess, look and feel of the estate. So each developer, they usually have, it's design guidelines which list the requirements when building your home in the estate. So this can refer to things such as the architectural style, so what the facade looks like, different colours and different materials. So sometimes you can have two different colours and two different materials, which will suffice for the facade. Roofing, landscaping, and fencing. So if it's timber fencing that's permitted, or if it's ColourBond as well. So the guidelines are contractual requirements to ensure a coherent vision for the communities achieved. So it's just saying that, you know, we want our estates to look, you know, lovely and beautiful, you know, and they have a bit of a uniqueness and a bit of character to the estates, rather than all the houses looking, you know, very similar and all the same. So
and also
you can always
probably,
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, would probably help with the value of your home later if you were to go to resell it. If you're having houses that have a higher standard to them that all look really nice, it will definitely help from that side of things as well.
Yeah, yeah. And then it's all lovely to drive through the estate, and you're seeing all these beautiful houses.
Exactly.
You can also get a copy of the design guidelines from the developer themselves. So even before you purchase your land and go for the build, you can see what developer requirements are for the estate, and obviously your builder normally will have a copy as well, or they can always get it from the developer. Yeah. Next, what's coming up in our next series? So styling your new home. So that's very exciting. So that's next Wednesday. And then the following weeks, we've got the role of a development manager. So who are they and what do they do? Which is going to be really informative as well. And how green is your thumb? So landscaping tips to consider, and then to become a pro. I think I need to watch that one. I've got some weeds in my garden. So yeah, everyone, we just want to say thank you so much to Steph for joining us today. It was very informative. You've been really helpful. And thank you for everyone else for joining. You can contact us at Your Land. So I might just go to the next slide, Steph. With some details, there we go. So getting in touch if you've got any questions for us guys, melbourne@yourland.com, or if you've got any questions for Stephanie, so stephanie.vonesca@denniscorp.com.au, so that's her details there. And then everything we've discussed today, please remember it is general, so everyone's situation and circumstances, everyone's different, so it's always best to seek your own advice as well. And that's it. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you in the next session next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.